Hope you guys are fine. Today we will discuss about the functions of glucocorticoids. In previous lecture we have seen its secretion and its synthesis. Now I've told you the cortisol is the most potent glucocorticoids which are naturally occurring. And its normal concentrations average is around 20 microgram per 100 ml and secretory rate is 15 to 20 mg per day, and its half-life is around 60 to 90 minutes. So in terms of the functions, as you have studied in all other hormones, we see its effect on carb metabolism. We discuss about its effects on proteins and also on the lipid metabolism. Then here in related to the cortisol, we will discuss some additional functions of the glucocorticoids. Now about the carbohydrate metabolism. Now the basic word which you guys should keep in mind is that the glucocorticoids, especially cortisol, it actually causes hyperglycemia. So we'll discuss all those mechanisms which lead to this hyperglycemia. First is the stimulation of gluconeogenesis. As you know, gluconeogenesis means the formation of sugar from non-sugar sources. So what does it do? It causes the mobilization of the extrahepatic amino acids into the liver. So it takes the protein from the, basically breaks down the protein in your muscles, and then it transfers that protein to your liver, and then it increases the concentration of enzymes which are required for the gluconeogenesis. So in this way it stimulates the gluconeogenesis, which means formation of glucose from non-sugar sources. In this case this is amino acid. So obviously when there are more glucose, so it will lead to the hyperglycemia. Secondly, it decreases the utilization of glucose by the cell by depressing NADH oxidation. As you guys know, the NADH oxidation is required in the glycolysis, so if it is inhibited, so glucose won't be utilized by the cell. There is a pathology which is related to it, which we call as adrenal diabetes. In adrenal diabetes, as you can see, your liver is producing more glucose and it is not even allowing that glucose to be utilized by your cells. So what happens? There is hyperglycemia. As this hyperglycemia is not due to pancreatic deficiency, so we call, and it is related to the cortisol or glucocorticoids or adrenal gland, so we call this adrenal diabetes. Another feature of this adrenal diabetes is that it leads to the insulin resistance. So no matter how much your insulin is there to compete the effects of the cortisol, as there is insulin resistance, so cell won't respond to that insulin and it will lead to the hyperglycemia, and that hyperglycemic state is known as adrenal diabetes. Now its effect on the protein metabolism. It has two effects on the protein metabolism. Number one, it causes the catabolism, which means it converts the protein into the amino acid, and as we have discussed in the carbohydrate metabolism, that amino acid is used for the formation of glucose, which we call as gluconeogenesis. And the second effect of cortisol on protein metabolism is that it decreases the protein synthesis in all tissues. So it is basically decreasing the amount of protein from the extrahepatic tissue, though it will transfer that amino acids to the liver. As you know, the one important function of the liver is the formation of the plasma protein. So keep it in a broad spectrum. Cortisol basically increases the breakdown of proteins. It takes the amino acid to the liver from extrahepatic tissue to the hepatic tissue, and then in the liver it uses that amino acid to form glucose, and also these amino acids are utilized to form the plasma protein. So your plasma protein levels are high, your amino acid levels of liver are high, your gluconeogenesis is more. So how does it do that? Number one, it increases the amino acid in the blood. Obviously when it will cause the catabolism, the amino acid will first enter into the blood, then it will go into your liver. Then it diminishes the transport of amino acids into the extrahepatic tissue. So the amino acids which are present in your blood or in your liver, they won't be transferred to your extrahepatic tissue. Here we mean the muscles. The third and final point is it enhances the transport into the hepatic cells from the extrahepatic cells. So up till now we know that the cortisol, it increases the glucose in your blood. Secondly, it increases the catabolism of protein and it decreases the protein synthesis. Now what's about the fat metabolism? Just like amino acid, it also causes the mobilization of the fats from the adipose tissues. And when there are free fatty acids, they are available, so it leads to the utilization of the fatty acid for the energy and it increases oxidation of the fatty acids. So in this way, the cortisol basically it conserves glucose but it utilizes your fats and your protein. So whenever there is a condition of the stress, it will cause the mobilization of the fat and it will actually form energy from the fat through the fatty acid oxidations. So we can get idea that it prefers fat for energy utilization as compared to the glucose. Now, due to this abnormal mobilization of the fat at different parts of your body, at some parts the fat is mobilized more, at some points the fat is mobilized less, and at the some parts there is more deposition of the fat. So the typical deposition of the fat on the torso and on the face, it leads to the specific structure we call as the buffalo torso and the moon face shape. These two basically are the diagnostic points too in case if there is excess cortisol secretion. Now again, it gives a permissive role. So glucocorticoid basically help functions of the catecholamines in the lipolysis, bronchodilation and calorogenic effect. So whenever there are conditions of the stress, obviously there are more catecholamines, so glucocorticoid will help those catecholamines to work. Another function of the glucocorticoids are a role in the stress. As you know, the glucocorticoids cause rapid mobilization of amino acids from their store. So basically it make them available for the energy synthesis. So whenever there is a stress, obviously your body will need more energy. So it actually uses the fats and proteins for synthesis of that energy. So that's why it has role in the stress. And also you have seen that whenever there are stress condition, doesn't matter if it's only physical stress, if it is a mental stress or the depression, the cortisol levels raise. Another important function of cortisol are the anti-inflammatory effects. I have told you earlier that the cortisol, they are used in a different treatment of the different diseases where the main cause of that disease is the inflammation. So if we give the cortisol to that person, obviously we give the synthetic or glucocorticoids to that person, so it will be having anti-inflammatory effects. As you know, in inflammation there are different stages. For example, release of chemical mediators, erythema, non-pitting edema, leukocytosis and growth of fibrous tissue. So how does the cortisol prevent the inflammation and how does the cortisol actually relieves that inflammation? It works. Number one, it causes the rapid resolution. Inflammatory promoters are blocked and rate of healing is enhanced. Also it causes polycythemia, lymphocytopenia and eosinopenia. Here we discuss about the regulation of cortisol secretion. Cortisol is basically your hypothalamus produce corticotrophic release hormone and it affects on your pituitary to form the ACTH. Now ACTH causes the formation of the cortisol from the adrenal cortex. As you know, these are the final effects of the cortisol: gluconeogenesis, protein mobilization, fat mobilization and stabilizations of the lysosomes, which are basically help in the control of inflammatory reactions. So these have negative feedback effect on the stress levels, and when stress is decreased, the release of CRH from the hypothalamus is also decreased. Now these are the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is that your cortisol level are highest at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, if we again go to the role of the cortisol on the resolution of inflammation, so it has the resolution of inflammation in two parts. One is the blocking at the early stage, and the second is the resolution. How it blocks at early stage? It stabilizes the lysosomes. So the lysosomes are stabilized, so obviously the inflammatory mediators, they won't be released. Secondly, it decreases the capillary permeability. If the capillary permeability is decreased, so all the substances which are inflammatory mediators and promoters, they won't be released into the extrahepatic tissue. There will be less edema. Second, it decreases WBC migration. Obviously, you know, whenever there is inflammatory reaction, the WBC start migrating to that area. So if it decreases the WBC migration, it will eventually decrease the inflammation. At fourth point, it suppresses the immune system. So the immune system, which is producing more and more immune cells, WBCs and other lymphocytes, leukocytes, when they are suppressed, so obviously the inflammatory reactions will be suppressed. And the last point, it causes attenuation of the fever by affecting on the roles of the interleukins. If there are more interleukins and prostaglandins, so the fever which is associated with the inflammation, it will be less. So this is where the cortisol basically blocks the inflammation. Secondly, rapid resolution if inflammation has already occurred. So it blocks the inflammatory promoters and enhances the rate of healing. Thank you very much. Hope you guys understand this lecture. If there is any confusion, you guys can text me or you guys can mail me.